had big ideas, big ambitions for this weekend, and then things did not go as planned or you thought? And those ambitions kind of just went poof, right? Who's at least felt this poof feeling at least like once this month? Daily? Okay, y'all are my people. I want to share a few expectation versus reality pictures for you that I'm sure have happened for you in the past. So like that perfect family beach picture, and then like the reality is like that. The diet, like I got the plan, and then it's like Friday hits and it's like this. The DIY project, you're like, yes, I like it. And then you start going and then like this happens and yeah. Maybe that new idea to make money, you're just excited about, 20 grand a month. Yeah, it's going to be amazing. It's going to be huge. The plan, and then the reality is like bills, right? Maybe it's the life improvement. You're like, I got a plan for change my life. And then the reality sets in and Netflix is just better. The faith routine even, right? The plan, you're like, oh, I know what I need to do. And then the reality, it's like you just don't, there's a lot to do, right? A lot of us, we don't experience life the way our ambitions are, and when things don't go as planned, what do you naturally do? Do you push harder? Do you get frustrated? Do you shut down? Do you distract yourself? Most of us, we're used to this. We're used to things not going as planned, but what we do with it can look very different. And generally speaking, which many of us are unaware of, is most of us don't explode about it. We don't. Which would be easier if we just exploded. We knew we just got to change that, all right? But what most of us actually do is we just slowly disengage. We let our ambition just drift and disappear. Have you felt that before? Can you see that maybe played out in some area of your life? Today, we're talking about the times when this wasn't the plan and like what we're living. Now, before we go any further, I do just want to say good morning. Welcome to Center Point Church. Thanks for showing up today. My name's Aaron. I'm a pastor here. If you've never been before, our vision is to be a church for the unchurched, meaning we want to be a place where people without a church home feel welcome. And our mission to doing that is to help you, who's here right now, take the next step in your relationship with God. We see that step could be just showing up to church for the first time in a long time. It could be starting a relationship with God. It could be acting on something in your faith, or it could be helping us be the church for the unchurched. But right now, we are in week 3 of our series called Hello, My Name Is, and we've been looking at emotions. Yay, right? But you should have got this booklet on your way in, or maybe you got it in the first 2 weeks if you were here. If you didn't, the hosts are actually going to come down now and bring you one. You can just raise your hand and grab one. It's kind of like we're giving away hot dogs, but instead books. But otherwise, if you forgot yours, we do just have like a definition sheet for you too that they can hook you up with as well. But we have this booklet prepared for you like this, where we want you to interactively write definitions, because this is a resource for you. Like, this is a roadmap to help you unlock 30 different emotions and what they actually mean. Now, Brené Brown, she's a researcher on the brain and our emotions. She believes there are 87 different emotions or states of being. And that number, it can change depending on who you ask. But what is way more than, it's way more than the typical person can list off, such as like 2 or 3. So what we're doing is we're attempting to cover just 30 of those, 87 this month. And we're doing that here at church because I believe being more emotionally aware of what you are feeling and what others are feeling, it can change everything for you. And like when we look at Jesus too and his interactions with others, it's hard to see that like he was like the most emotionally intelligent person ever, it seems. Like he was a person who was self-aware. He understood his own emotions along with others' emotions well. He knew like what he was feeling. He knew what others were feeling. He could read body language and sense things were up with people. And by doing that, he knew how to help. So as a pastor, I not only want us to like see him as our Lord and Savior, because that saves your life, it's your eternity, and will guide it now, but I want us to learn like his emotional awareness methods and be able to do that better. I mean, if it was a skill of his, I feel it should also be a skill of ours as well. So for 5 weeks, what we've been doing is we're studying 6 different emotions each week, or states of being, and we've been defining them to create common language as a church. And we're going to study Jesus through all this and see like what he did with these emotions or how he navigated them when they started to brew. Now this series, it's been compiled from a bunch of different books, but I do want to give a lot of credit to Brene Brown, her book, Atlas of the Heart. I see it as a really great resource along with the Bible to this content. But today's mood is one filled with words that I don't think you would typically lump together, at least often, but they're words of this mood that are all just quietly demotivating us. Feelings that have us give up or pull back and sometimes just stop fighting. Again, today's mood is when things just aren't going according to plan. And the words we're covering are boredom, disappointment, regret, frustration, discouragement, resignation. And these words, they're all to some degree, they play a part in the casual drift or pulling us away from our desires, progress, hope. Even when at one point you were sold out for that thing. So today I want to help us be aware of these feelings because I want us to go towards good, towards our purpose, progress, and hope. And I want to give us clarity on what each of these emotions might be saying to us and how we can use them to either stop us from pulling out of something or how to combat it and address it when they arise. And to do so, I think there's this amazing story where Jesus sees someone go through kind of this progression, kind of through each of these words, one after the other. Because these words, many times, they work like that. They go from one to the other. Like you can kind of see, like they kind of transition to that. And the story I want to look at today is the story of Peter. Now, if you don't know him well, I want to start with kind of like the basics of Peter. Peter is a fisherman. It's not just his hobby, but it's kind of everything he knows. It's his profession. He has a wife, he has a home, he has a responsibility. That's what he fishes for. And Peter, as you read the stories about him, he's known for kind of being aggressive, strong, and I guess like to summarize and kind of stick to the positive, he's ambitious, right? But Jesus comes along, and after a long night of not catching fish for Peter, because that happens even to the pros, it does, Jesus, this random guy to Peter at this point, notices him and points him in the right direction for fish. Like he's from ashore, and he's like, hey, you there, did you catch anything? No. What have you tried over there? And Peter, I'm sure, is like, who's this nobody, right? Tell me where to fish, when all my knowledge says otherwise. But something moves Peter to try it, and Peter catches so many fish, like a miraculous amount of fish, and he's amazed. So amazed that he can't just what happened, just go up as pure chance or luck. So he actually engages with this person, Jesus, and he responds to the call to follow him. Now, I think it's worth to point out, just because Peter says yes to Jesus in this moment, and he left and he followed him, it doesn't make him this perfect Jesus follower. He still has his old ways, his perspective, his struggles, his doubts. He's just saying this person is someone special, and he's ready to learn from him and reorient his life towards him. And like he pursues Jesus' ways instead of fishing now. He leaves fishing what he knows, and that is a huge change. But this gradual learning and growing and changing, I think, is important to remember. Like when we think about our own stories with Jesus, like many times we can be amazed or intrigued and start to follow, but still have a lot of struggles or doubts. Yet we still need to stay in and learn and obey even when it's hard. Do you do that? Peter starts following Jesus with that, and Jesus starts training him. And Peter becomes kind of Jesus's, like one of his top 3 dudes. He's one of the guys Jesus intimately brings into the conversation of a lot of things. And Peter, his active response to Jesus shows that. Like in a scary time when the disciples are in a storm, Peter notices Jesus walking on the water and decides to go out with it, like by him, right? And if you know the story, like he starts to fall, he starts to sink, But he went into stormy waters, right? I mean, come on. Like, I don't think he's mad at himself here for like having some doubt. He's impressed. Because when y'all intentionally choose to walk out in a storm, like a Wisconsin storm, like a blizzard storm, on purpose and stay out there on purpose, then you can call Peter out for lacking faith, right? But like he's confident. So confident that there's a time Jesus asks, "Who do you think I am, Peter?" And he says, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." And then Jesus says to him, "Blessed are you. On this rock I will build my church." Like Peter is in it. He's getting the affirmation. He's left his past. He's obeying, and he's fully experienced this goodness of God and his ways. And if I'm Peter in that moment or after that moment, I'd be daydreaming over that statement. Like, I'm going to be the rock. Like Dwayne Johnson comes to mind, but like, I'm going to be the rock. And like, but like what he's probably picturing is like me and Jesus, like we're going to be opening a church together. Yay. And then he's like maybe picturing like, me and Jesus, we are going to be reaching the lost. We're saving them. And then like me and Jesus, like, you know what? We're like giving people our shirt off our back, right? The movie that he's playing in his mind is amazing, I'm sure. But then a series of events happen. Jesus starts talking about his death, and Peter's like, "That would never happen. No." And Jesus is like, "Get away from me, Satan. Like you're trying to detract me from what I need to do." And then Jesus talks about his coming death again and says they're all going to abandon him. They're all going to betray him. And again, Peter's like, "We would never." And Jesus then says, like, "Peter, I tell you the truth, this very night before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. And so like what happens is people come to arrest Jesus. Peter fights. He's ready. It says he even sliced off a soldier's ear. But then Jesus is imprisoned. And time sits. Like not a lot, but like time's idle. Where Jesus is gone. And Peter's left alone. Like he's with the disciples. Alone. And from the reports of it, they aren't like, how do we get Jesus out? Let's break him out. They're just like, what just happened? I think I'm out. The movie changed. And it says Peter's out walking, I'm guessing kind of flabbergasted by it all, but also a bit bored even from like not doing what he thinks he should be doing. And the news of Jesus being arrested is out, and people start to notice him as one of the followers. And again, like, so it's like, you're one of them. And Peter's like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." Again, another person like, "You must be one of them." And he's like, "No, I wasn't." And then a third time, like, he's like, "A curse on me if I'm lying. I don't know the man." And the rooster crows. Again, Peter knows exactly what he just did in that moment, and it kills him inside. Now, without going into depth, Jesus is killed the next day, and serious disappointment sets in, I'm sure, for all of them. It said, like, we had hoped that he was the one, and they think it's over. And regret sets in, like, he didn't do what Jesus wanted him to do. He failed. He honestly didn't do anything. And so what happens is the disciples and Peter are just there. Like no motivation, kind of boredom, like coming off of the daily ministry and miracles and living for Jesus to nothing. They're idle. And the reason that they're idle is they just feel lost without Jesus. And what happens is they resign kind of from living for him in that moment, doing what they've been doing. They resigned from that, and instead what do? They go fishing. Peter goes back to doing what he used to. Again, it wasn't him just doing his hobby to pass time. It was him quitting what he's been doing. In which, when they go back out, they experience discouragement and also frustration because they don't catch any fish. And it's not going well for them when they go back to that. Until this man shows up on shore and tells them to throw their nets in a different area. And I'm going to share the end of that story in a little bit here. But I want to reflect on Peter's journey for a moment. The emotional responses we see like of this progression of like when things don't go as planned for him. And it seemed like the things he dreamed of, the things he gave his life for, hope for, both the explicit and implicit things, when things all changed, it seems he dealt with these emotions, right? Boredom, disappointment, regret, frustration, discouragement, resignation. And his response to them wasn't great. Like, they didn't go to the positive. Have you done that before? Have you, like, maybe done things like this? Maybe in a relationship, maybe in a work situation or home life or a weekend or a plan you had. Now, before I give like kind of some clear definitions for each of these, I do want to share a little bit about me and my own journey with some of these words to help make them real for you. Because I've dealt with some things that haven't gone the way I want a lot. And I'm going to explain it from what seems like, are you just telling a bunch of church examples, Aaron? In which, like, not necessarily. I'm not just sharing church examples. I'm sharing about a lot of things that are tied to church for me. Because Centerpoint is not just the church that I'm a part of, like many of you. It is the church I'm a part of, but it's also the organization I started. It's the place of my employment. It's the place where I lead a team of staff. It's the place where I have a board and oversight. It's the place where my friends and family gather. A place like where my kids and my wife, we have friends together. And so I say all that because although I'm sharing about church as a pastor, what I hope you hear me sharing about in these next few minutes is things that can connect to your dreams of how you feel about your friends, the place of employment that you're in, the organization you're a part of, the teams you've been on. So for me, starting a church was a dream I got when I was maybe 20 or so. And when I started to think about making it a reality at about 25, it meant embracing kind of this calling that I felt from God. And one day I knew I would have to leave my job, my security, my provision, what I knew for God. And I knew I'd have to kind of risk it all. So after 5 years of kind of planning and training and listening for where God wanted us to go, we announced in 2019, a year before we launched Centerpoint, that it was happening here in Fond du Lac. And during that time, I had to build everything. And I did as much as I could while working at other jobs until I had to kind of be fully in doing this, preparing and raising funds and finding people. Well, in between that announcement and the start time, COVID happened. Remember that? Churches were closed, and I was starting one, right? People like didn't want to meet, like you weren't supposed to, right? It sucked. It was scary. And what I was doing during that time was raising support, connected with maybe 20 different pastors or churches, kind of sharing our vision for support, hoping for support from these churches. Even stuff. Could you get us an old mic? You know, that'd be great. Well, there were two churches that responded. Only two. Ripon and Oshkosh Community Church. And these were the only two that helped. And I'm super grateful for them, but they were the only ones that helped start Centerpoint. I got a lot of no's, and I got a lot of no responses from pastors. And the total I got between the two of them was less than 50 grand. So I needed to create a church with less than 50 grand of seed money, and like half of that I wouldn't even get until after year one. Everything else was built from individuals who gave here. Now, you might be like, that sounds like a lot of money. Whoa, that's a lot. That was devastating to me. That amount was devastating because most churches have between 100 and 300 grand startup funds. But we kept going. Amidst COVID, amidst the low funds, and I had a number of mentors that were like, I'm in, I'll help you, Aaron. And then as things get rolling, two bail. Like, they just were like, I can't be a mentor or official mentor for you, Aaron. And as a young pastor, ouch, right? But to them, my process was just a bit too radical for them. When launch day came, like we launched small, much smaller than anticipated, much smaller than the stats say you actually need to be sustaining as a church. And I didn't like that because the stats say 9 out of 10 churches fail after a few years. But we kept going. And then over the years, it wasn't like, all right, we made it. Woo, woo. It was like every step forward always had some steps backwards. One that left me scrambling, always feeling, are we fully set? Like I'd finally have the chance. We'd hire someone for 10 hours, and we'd train them for months and get in a groove, and like something like would just happen and it wouldn't work out anymore. And totally understandable, totally respectable, because life changes for people. respectfully so. But as a small organization leader, it was hard to take when you're trying to just do a lot. I had people come and say, like, we love this place. We're going to start serving here every week. And then gone, disappear. I've had people who seem like they're going to be like friends of mine. Like our kids are going to be friends. And then gone. Now, I'm not sharing all this to be like, aw, poor Aaron. But like all of these brought up these feelings. Like pastors have feelings too. I don't know if you knew that or not. But these were blows to me. And they felt like loss of momentum. And if you were to ask me what I was feeling in all this, I would have probably used the words, like some of these words interchangeably, to describe like that things just were not going the way I wanted them to go, and causing a bit of anger or stress in me. So I typically would just say like, I'm frustrated. Or the more common one was, I'm tired. Because I grew up to know that frustration was just part of life. And it made life tiring. But in reality, I was feeling different things. And after each of these different moments, if I could have assessed it, I feel if I could have better articulated them, I could have navigated the moments better. Because some of them discouraged me way more than they should have, and they induced anger and anxiety and even a bit of letdown. So what I want to do is I want to break down the differences of some of these words in our mood today, and I hope that we can understand them better so that we can know like what we are actually feeling in those situations like this and why. And then use kind of my story and Peter's story to help you find and understand your own relationship with these words. So the first word I want us to talk about is boredom. And boredom is the uncomfortable state of wanting to engage in satisfying activity but being unable to do it. Have you had this before? Like maybe with your kids, or with your weekend or an evening, like you just aren't satisfied and nothing is really giving you interest. Like with Peter, they were on such a big mission together, right? Like with Jesus, and then they weren't. And I'm sure wasn't as satisfying. Like I'm guessing he's bored. And his emotions and his experience, they kind of brought idleness. He's bored. For me, again, COVID hit, and I had all these ministry dreams of satisfying activity, and it just wasn't happening. If I was to paint some pictures, kind of like I did with Peter, I was thinking, like, when I'd be church planning, like, it's going to be me hanging out at a coffee table, like, with Jesus, and people are just like, tell us more. Or, like, this one, like, it's like me and Jesus just, like, hanging out at, like, food pantries every day. Like, this is what we do. Or even this one, like, so many files, like, ooh, new church in town, love that, let's share that, like, just like, whoa, yes, the news is getting out. Or like all our events just are like standing room only, like just so many people, like that. Those are the things in my mind. But instead, I was dealing with awkward conversations with a mask on, and then trying to meet with like one person from my home with this thing called Zoom. Remember that? Now for you, where and when are you bored? And when you're in that moment, do you know why? Like, is it because you have nothing to do? Is it unrealistic expectations? Is it desires that aren't possible? Is it a lack of motivation? Boredom, many times, is the start to stepping away from good or progress. Research actually shows boredom produces maladaptive or not appropriate behaviors that act as a substitute for meaningful action. Boredom produces a psychological craving for stimulation, which, if not directed positively, can lead to negative behaviors such as increased alcohol, drug abuse, impulsive gambling, reckless behaviors, and compulsive social media. So you need to be cautious where you let your boredom take you. But then on the other side of boredom, they say it's actually healthy to be bored. Like boredom is this catalyst to doing new things that you always wanted. It might not be in the expectation or at the same level of excitement you anticipated, but research shows boredom is when you tend to get creative. It's when you have time. It's like when you can go to like the thing in front of you. So now if you've been listening to what I just said in the last minute here, like I just told you two kind of conflicting things, right? Boredom is this catalyst for bad behavior. boredom is this catalyst for creative and good behaviors. That's conflicting, right? But what you need to take note of is boredom is a catalyst. And a catalyst is a thing that produces change or a response. It's a thing that takes you somewhere. And you need to control where your boredom takes you. Unfortunately, Peter's boredom goes to the past, to what he's known, fishing. Because disappointment takes over. Disappointment is a loaded word, but I want to define it super clearly for you. Disappointment is unmet expectations. Unmet expectations. The more significant the expectation, the more significant the disappointment. These expectations can be what Brene Brown describes as unexamined and unexpressed, or examined and expressed. And this is important because she states disappointment is the most frequently experienced emotion. So what these two types mean is kind of important. So the first one, unexamined and unexpressed, are things that we kind of conjure up in our minds. It's the images of Peter maybe thinking like about what being the rock is going to look like, and having a church with Jesus, what that's going to look like in his mind. For me, it was the subconscious thoughts of like what I thought church planning was going to look like. It's you creating this movie in your head of what it's going to look like. And the movie in your head is always good, right? Unexamined expectations, they're typically filled with unrealistic ideas. In Brene Brown's book, she talks about unexamined disappointment as something that brewed fights between her and her husband with weekends and kids. And what she describes is, I think, the most common fight between Sydney and I, my wife and I, as well. It's the disappointment from unclear expectations of what you each hope to get done and who's going to do what. In which the solution for them was they asked, what do you want this weekend to look like? They asked that of each other, and it resolved it. And this has been a result for Sydney and I as well. Like just stating your intentions. It's the time where you can actually call each other out and be like, that is not possible. Like, how are we going to get all that done? Which is what my wife does to me often, because I have a giant list. Like, even in your get-her-donerness, Aaron, you are not going to get that done. And it helps. It helps us. As I was thinking about the content for this week, I was sitting in my car because I saved the last 30 minutes or so of my day before dinner that night. I wanted to run to Menards. I wanted to do a UPS return. I had to stop at Aldi's quick, Walmart, Ace, and then back home. And I was like 3 out of the 5 stops in, and it was already 30 minutes, and was disappointed. But I defaulted to saying, like, I'm just tired. I'm tired right now. I'm stressed. But when I really thought about it, I wasn't, because, I'm like, I'm speaking on these things, like, I wasn't physically tired. I wasn't doing something that should have been deemed stressful or, like, be done a specific way. I was just disappointed. I didn't get it all done. But that's because my expectations were unrealistic. I was literally setting myself up to be disappointed, because if you punch all those locations into the map, you can barely drive to these locations in 30 minutes. 28 minutes exactly just driving to them. And so, like, if I don't want the disappointment, I need to be realistic with my expectations. But even still, when you are realistic and have the other type, examined and express expectations, you can still be disappointed, which feels almost even worse at times. It's even why sometimes it's hard to express like what you want. Some of us feel if we express our desires out loud, it's going to cause greater disappointment, which shows like when people actually do it, we're seeing them kind of like be vulnerable, do courage to truly share what they want to us. It is typically them being a goal-oriented person, a hopeful person, ambitious person. And as a Christian, like, we are called to be those people. It's what Peter did. Like, when Jesus said he'd deny him, he's like, I would never. And I think it was right for him to say and do, even though he failed. Because again, like, we're to be the hope of the world. But many of us, we are afraid to do this. Like, especially in our Midwestern context, like, we like to live with the ideology, expect the worst, right? Expect the worst. So that, like, so that you're surprised when like things actually are okay. You don't want to let yourself down. You don't want to let others down. Does anyone else do this? Like expect the worst. I used to do this a lot, and so all of a sudden I read this book, and Brene told this story about an interview she had with a guy for her research that did this, and it shook me in this thinking. I want to read it for you. It's this. It says, "I used to think that the best way to go through life was to expect the worst. That way, if it happened, you were prepared. And if it didn't happen, you were pleasantly surprised. Then I was in a car accident and my wife was killed. Needless to say, expecting the worst didn't prepare me at all. And worse, I still grieve for all of those wonderful moments we shared and that I didn't fully enjoy. My commitment to her is to fully enjoy every moment now. I just wish she was here now that I know how to do that." Don't do that to yourself. Again, disappointment can be examined and unexamined, and it's a lot of the emotion we feel. But sometimes it goes to regret. And regret, it kind of transitions from disappointment to when we believe the outcome was caused by our decision or action. I believe Peter was disappointed in his action, even knowing he was going to fail. And then I believe it shifted to regret because he didn't do what he was supposed to. And I think he regretted not fighting more for Jesus to change the outcome. For me, there are absolutely some regrets I have in church planning and leading a church. Like, I wish I said things differently to staff and attenders at times. I wish I focused more on people than the outcomes and results at times. Yet even still, like with those changes, the outcome would still probably have been the same. But I believe regret is taking ownership of what you've done and learning from it. And the story we see in Jesus is even though he knew Peter was going to do something regretful, Jesus still loved him. That's important to remember, because that's the same for us. Like, Jesus still loves you knowing you'll do regretful things and knowing you've done regretful things. It's just like what you do with them and what you do with that love is important. In today's time, living with regrets is kind of like a bit countercultural. It's trendy to kind of be like, no regrets, right? No regrets. And think like, just forget everything. Live life. But Brene says something so profound to this type of thinking. She says, the idea, I think we have a slide for this one. The idea of no regrets doesn't mean living with courage. It means living without reflection. To live without regret is to believe we have nothing to learn, no amends to make, and no opportunity to be braver with our lives. Oof. Regrets don't have to be what you're defined by, but to be something we take ownership of and use as learning moments. All right, so we have 3 down. We have 3 left. Discouraged, resigned, and frustrated. Discouraged is when I'm losing my confidence and enthusiasm about a future effort. Resigned is I've lost my confidence and enthusiasm about a future effort. And frustration is when something that feels out of my control is preventing me from achieving my desired outcome. Frustration, that last one to me, is the unknown present obstacle. Now, if you kind of look at those, you can kind of see the progression. Like discouraged, right? That first one is like, you haven't lost motivation yet, but it's hitting you a bit. To me, it's the big bill when you're trying to save. It's the time when you're trying, you have to wait instead of just move when you want to get going right away. It's the delay. It's the step backwards. It's the argument. It's not over, but it's negative energy. In my mind, Peter was discouraged with losing Jesus, his partner, right? Right after his death, he had regret, I'm sure. But when Jesus didn't just rise up again right away, after the first day, he's losing hope. Do you have discouragement? There's a movie called The Pursuit of Happiness. Has anyone seen this? It's 20 years old now. Yeah, okay, so lots of us. It's a movie about this guy who is just trying to make it in the world, with his kid. And there are so many moments of discouragement in this movie. He's not getting sales. He's not being taken seriously. He's not having the money and the time. He's not getting what he feels is owed to him. Discouragement. And I think this movie articulates it so well. So I have a couple scenes I want to show for you from the movie. So like this first one, like he's trying to make sales and like he's just making calls and he's going off of a list and he's just getting denied and nope, call this other person. Nope, denied. And then like he has to carry around this big old computer and he's getting to his apartment, he's got his kid and he gets to the door and he notices he's been evicted. Doesn't have the funds. And so like he's dealing with this.
Why are things here? Dad.
Right? Discouragement. And then like they go to a homeless shelter, like to find a place to stay, and he's in line and with his kid and
Hey, everybody. We have 4 spots left, and that's all.
4 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, he's fit.
Come on, man.
Like discouragement, right?
Hey, that's my spot. Come on, don't do this to me. Don't.
Discouragement is this momentum killer. Like the word speaks its definition, anti-encouragement. It's what leads you to drifting away. When that happens, what do you do with it? Do you resign? Our next word. In Peter's situation, he does. What he does is after discouragement, doesn't just resolve right away. He resigns and says with his action, I'm going back to what I used to do, fishing. He resigns from his calling. He resigns from the change he felt he needed. He resigns from doing Jesus' mission. It wasn't a drastic statement he's making here. It was just a drift. He just goes back fishing. And to make matters worse, like fishing, this thing he used to know so well leads him to frustration because they aren't catching fish when he goes back. Again, frustration is when something that feels out of my control is preventing me from achieving my desired outcome. And to be honest, frustration is part of life, right? Because we can't control life. Like we can choose how we respond to it, but we can't control everything around us. Many of you know I have 3 kids, and each one is a little ball of frustration. There are also balls of love and joy and fun, but I am often frustrated because I think I can control the situation, or I can control what will happen. I know how to predict, I know how to plan, but I get frustrated because when you have 3 other uncontrollable variables, right, it leads to frustration. Don't even get me started on my wife, right? She's not here today, so that one's okay to say. But that's what Peter is thinking. Like with his own life and circumstances. When Peter goes back to fishing and not catching something, he isn't just thinking, this isn't what I hoped, disappointment. He's thinking, why is this not working? I know how to do this. He wanted control, and we know he didn't have control. Like he's had times where he hasn't caught fish before. But in this moment, instead of accepting that he can't control it, he feels the universe is against him. It's kind of like the pinnacle of when things aren't going the way you want. And I do want to just point out, sometimes God will allow frustration in your life. Not to punish you, but to show you that your life was never meant to be sustained by your own control, but that you are to be reliant on God. And I think this is like what's happening here, because I want to show you like what happens next. Like while they're fishing, this man shows up, and it's the resurrected Jesus. It says, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, haven't you any fish? No, they answered, he said. And he said to them, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. And as soon as Peter heard him say this, he jumped into the water. And it was great, right? But Peter still kind of has these regrets within him. And God knows that and wants to teach Peter through it. So what happens a few verses later is it says, after breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me? And Peter's like, you know I love you. And he asks him again right after, well, do you love me? You know I love you. Well, then care for my people. And then he asks him a third time, do you love me? Lord, you know I love you. Then feed my sheep. Be my church. Be the rock. You see, Jesus is restoring him here. 3 times of neglecting with 3 times of be my rock. Lead my church. And after this all, Peter does. He becomes the rock. He is the one whom the church is kind of built upon and expanded so vastly from. Like without Peter, like the news of Jesus wouldn't have gotten to where it is. But it's not that he was like never had disappointment after that or regrets or frustration or discouragement in the future. It's not that he didn't ever have that. Like Peter was criticized. He was put in prison. He was slandered and hated. But Jesus shows him resilience is worth it. Resilience with alliance and connection with God, it's doable. That's where God's power comes in. I get it. Some of you might be like, how? Like, how does Jesus, this like person who isn't like next to me, like those pictures you showed, Aaron, he's not like next to me today. How is he to give me power in those moments? And I want to be clear. The power of Jesus, the power of Christianity that makes it better than any other faith is the Bible says Jesus gives you his Spirit. Something spiritually changes inside you that helps you stay more motivated than others. It also says he renews our minds. Like he speaks truth and points out in times of lies and frustrations, these truths come to mind. And then it says he promises his presence to us. Like you'll have this sense that you are not alone in those moments. These are things promised to us in Scripture that don't really arrive until like after that all went down with Peter, but is promised to us today. Like when you choose to follow Jesus, you get this. So fortunately for us, like we have a little advantage that Peter didn't, and you might want that or need that, in which becoming a Christian is professing like, I need that, Jesus. And you could do that today, and you could be starting your journey with him. But back to Peter, Jesus is trying to teach, don't let your disappointments, discouragement, your frustrations, don't let that drift you. Don't let it lead to resignation ever, even with death. These feelings are natural, but don't let it get to your resignation. And I think the example of Jesus is the teaching for a leader to know and understand and approach. Like as a pastor, I hear that and I think, I got work to do as a leader, to do this better, to talk with people during their disappointment and not let them get to resignation. And this is the ideal, like as parents or bosses or as captains or whatever it is. But a leader also is not Jesus. We need grace too. Just like Peter is no control master either and needs grace when people like him or like you and me let these emotions kind of take over, in which we all have work. In the pursuit of happiness, you see, after all the adversity of this character, of trying to care for his kid and make it and do sales and provide a life, be in a homeless shelter, he stays at it, and this happens. Check it out.
Wear a shirt today, being the last day and all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We appreciate that. But, wear one tomorrow, though, okay? Because tomorrow's going to be your first day. If you'd like to work here as a broker. Would you like that, Chris?
Yes, sir.
Good. We couldn't be happier. So, welcome.
I have like 3 minutes left. I know I'm a little long today, but he has resilience. And I think Jesus wants that for you and me. But what he does for Peter is not just the world's version of resilience, which is push through no matter what, but a Christian resilience, which is stay engaged with God even when you want to check out. Because Peter didn't get restored because he just pushed through it. He got restored because Jesus came to him and pulled him back in. For you, is God trying to pull you back to something? Are you giving him a chance to do that? Or bring you clarity on your situation of what that looks like? How you know is like prayer, it's scripture, it's having wise counsel, Christian community. Now for me, like in my story of church, I never got to resignation because these things told me like God wasn't trying to use these things to like transition me or anything like that. But these were things to like prepare me to have this resilience and to rely on God, to have Him pull me through those things. And it's helped me navigate even some of the more stressful things that I've had to deal with in the last year or two. Now, we've defined 6 different words today. And our goal is to be more aware of these different words, to address them before they derail us and know like what and why we may be feeling them. And then also to know these well so that we can help others notice them in themselves. So some questions for yourself and for others to see like maybe where you're at in these personally when you're living in a moment of something where it wasn't like what you had planned, along with maybe others, like when you're sensing that they're living through something that they didn't really have planned. Some things you can do. So the first one, like ask yourself right now, like what am I actually feeling right now? Like why am I feeling that way? And then for others, like if you're noticing it in them, like what's been weighing on you the most lately? Ask them that. For self, like the next question, like what was I hoping would happen? And see if that stirs some understanding. Or others, like what were you hoping would happen there in that situation? For self, again, like what feels out of my control right now? And then for others, like what part of this feels out of your control? And then the last one, like, am I moving towards this or am I slowly checking out? And then others, you can do the same thing and ask them that if you're noticing them. Do you feel like you're still in it or are you starting to check out? As I wrap up, I don't know what your I'm going fishing moment is, but I do know this. Jesus hasn't walked away from you. And if you can just be honest about like what you're feeling and take one step back towards Him, He'll meet you there. Not with pressure, not with shame, but with purpose again. So don't check out. Stay in it with Him. Would you pray with me? Dear God, thank you for today. Thank you for just giving us a story of how we can see that you're in it with us. You don't want us to resign. You want us to stay in it. So God, I just pray that as we're going through that, help us be aware of those emotions and just know the direction you want us to go through that all.